What if everything you think you know about America's first president is only half the story? When we hear the name George Washington, we imagine a powerful leader, a fearless general, a man destined for greatness. His face appears on money, his statues stand tall across the nation, and his name is spoken with respect. But what if the real story is far more complex, more surprising, and even uncomfortable at times? What if the man who became the first president of the United States never wanted power, feared becoming a tyrant, and walked away from authority when the world expected him to seize it? History often turns people into legends, but legends hide the truth. Today, we are going to step behind the monument and uncover the hidden side of George Washington, the doubts he carried, the fears he never spoke about publicly, and the choices that quietly shaped the future of an entire nation. This is not the story you usually hear in textbooks. This is the story of the man behind the title. In the late 18th century, the world was ruled by kings and empires. Power was inherited, not earned. Ordinary people were expected to obey, not to govern themselves. In such a world, the idea of a nation without a king sounded dangerous and unrealistic. Yet, from the chaos of revolution, 13 fragile colonies attempted something the world had rarely seen before: a republic built on laws, not crowns. At the center of this experiment stood one man, trusted by soldiers, respected by rivals, and watched closely by the entire world. George Washington did not rise through political ambition or personal desire. He was pushed forward by history, by duty, and by a deep sense of responsibility to something larger than himself. Understanding his hidden story is not just about learning history, it's about understanding how modern leadership, democracy, and even the idea of power itself were shaped. To truly understand America, we must first understand the quiet, complicated, and deeply human story of its first president. Chapter 1. A man before the legend, before George Washington became a symbol, he was simply a man living in a dangerous and uncertain world. Born in 1732 in colonial Virginia, Washington grew up far from the grand halls of power. His family was modestly wealthy, but not elite. When his father died at the age of 11, George's childhood ended early. Responsibility replaced comfort, and ambition replaced innocence. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Washington never attended college. He lacked the polished education of lawyers and philosophers, which often made him feel insecure in elite circles. Yet this absence shaped him in a unique way. He became a man of action rather than theory, learning through observation, experience, and discipline. He trained himself relentlessly, studying maps, military manuals, and leadership through practice. From a young age, Washington was obsessed with reputation. He believed honor was earned through behavior, not birth. This belief would guide every major decision he made later in life. He wanted recognition, respect, and a lasting name, but not through tyranny or inherited power. Even early on, Washington understood that true leadership required restraint. These early years built the foundation of a man who would later carry the weight of a nation. His story did not begin with greatness. It began with struggle, self-doubt, and determination. Chapter 2. Learning leadership through failure. Washington's first taste of war came long before American independence. As a young officer fighting for the British during the French and Indian War, he experienced humiliation, defeat, and near disaster. His early military decisions were often flawed, leading to unnecessary losses. One particular mission ended in surrender, marking him as inexperienced and reckless in the eyes of European officers. Yet Washington did not quit. Instead, he absorbed every failure as a lesson. He observed how seasoned generals managed troops, supply lines, and morale. He learned patience, logistics, and the importance of preparation. More importantly, he learned humility. During battles, bullets passed through his coat without harming him, earning him a reputation for supernatural protection among Native American warriors. These moments strengthened his confidence, but also deepened his respect for fate and responsibility. Washington began to understand that leadership was not about personal glory, but survival, trust, and endurance. These lessons would later save the Continental Army from collapse. His failures forged his discipline, making him cautious, resilient, and deeply aware of the cost of war. By the time revolution arrived, Washington was no longer reckless. He was ready. Chapter 3: The Burden of Command. When the American colonies rebelled against British rule, Washington was chosen to lead not because he was the smartest or the most charismatic, but because he inspired trust. The Continental Army was poorly trained, underfunded, and constantly on the brink of collapse. Washington faced hunger, desertion, and political pressure from all sides. He lost more battles than he won, yet he refused to surrender. His genius lay not in tactical brilliance, but in endurance. He understood that victory did not require defeating the British outrightly, surviving longer than they were willing to fight. Washington prioritized unity, holding together soldiers from different colonies with conflicting interests. He punished cruelty, demanded discipline, and treated leadership as moral responsibility. During the harsh winter at Valley Forge, he stayed with his troops, sharing their suffering. This act cemented loyalty and respect. Washington's restraint prevented chaos. He resisted anger, revenge, and ego. Each decision weighed heavily on him, as he knew the revolution's failure would end the dream of self-governance forever. Command was not glory, it was sacrifice. Chapter 4: The Refusal of a Crown After Victory. The world expected Washington to seize power. His army was loyal, the nation admired him, and there were no limits stopping him from becoming king. In fact, some officers openly suggested it. History had taught them that power belonged to those strong enough to take it. But Washington shocked everyone. He resigned his command and returned home. This single act echoed across the world. It proved that power could be surrendered voluntarily. By refusing the crown, Washington protected the revolution from becoming another dictatorship. His decision established a precedent more powerful than any law. Leadership, he believed, was service, not dominance. He understood that America's future depended on setting the right example at the very beginning. By stepping away, he gave legitimacy to the idea that no one man was above the nation. This moment defined Washington more than any battle ever could. It was the quiet birth of American democracy. Chapter 5: Accepting the presidency reluctantly. When Washington was called to serve as the first president, he hesitated deeply. He feared failure, criticism, and the possibility of becoming what he despised, a tyrant. There were no rules, no traditions, no guidance. Every action he took would set a precedent. Washington understood the weight of this responsibility and accepted the rollout of duty, not desire. He rejected royal titles, choosing to be called simply Mr. President. He carefully balanced authority and restraint. Knowing the nation watched his every move, Washington built institutions rather than personal power. He listened, debated, and compromised. His presidency was an experiment in leadership without arrogance. By stepping carefully, he helped stabilize a fragile nation. The presidency became an office of responsibility, not a throne. Chapter 6: Choosing to walk away. Perhaps Washington's greatest decision came not during his presidency, but at its end. After 2 terms, many urged him to remain in office. The nation was still unstable, and his leadership was trusted. Yet Washington refused. He believed no leader should hold power indefinitely. By stepping down voluntarily, he established the 2-term tradition that protected American democracy for over a century. This decision reinforced the idea that leadership must be temporary. His farewell address warned against political division, foreign influence, and unchecked ambition. These warnings remain relevant today. Washington's departure was not weakness, was wisdom. He trusted the system more than himself. Chapter 7: The Moral Contradiction. Despite his ideals, Washington lived in a nation built on contradiction. He owned enslaved people, benefiting from a system he privately questioned. His writings reveal discomfort and moral struggle. Unlike many of his peers, he acknowledged slavery as a threat to the nation's soul. In his will, Washington freed his enslaved people after his wife's death. This act, though limited, set him apart. It did not erase the injustice, but it showed growth and recognition. Washington was not perfect. He was human. His life reflects the complexity of America itself, noble principles coexisting with deep flaws. Understanding this contradiction is essential to understanding history honestly. Chapter 8: The Legacy of Restraint. George Washington died in 1799, but his influence never faded. His greatest legacy was not victory or power, it was restraint. He showed the world that leadership could exist without tyranny. He proved that democracy could survive if leaders placed principles above ambition. Washington's life reminds us that the strength of a nation lies not in domination, but in self-control. In an age where power is often abused, his example remains revolutionary. America's first president did not shape history by ruling forever, he shaped it by knowing when to let go. As we come to the end of this story, it becomes clear that George Washington's true greatness was not found in power, wealth, or victory on the battlefield. It was found in his restraint. In a world where rulers clung to authority and empires were built on domination, Washington chose a different path. He understood that the future of America depended not on one man, but on the strength of its principles. He made mistakes, lived with contradictions, and carried doubts, yet he continuously placed the nation above himself. By walking away from power twice, he taught the world that leadership is not about ruling forever, but about knowing when to step aside. His life reminds us that democracy is fragile and survives only when leaders respect its limits. Today, when power is often pursued at any cost, Washington's example feels more relevant than ever. He was not perfect, but he was purposeful. And in choosing self-control over ambition, George Washington gave America its most valuable gift, not a crown, not a dynasty, but a lasting foundation of freedom and responsibility.